The storm started just before sunset. Dark clouds swallowed the sky while violent rain hammered against our windows hard enough to rattle the entire house. But inside our living room, the real storm had already begun. My younger sister, Chloe, stood beside the couch, crying hysterically while my parents surrounded her protectively like she was the victim of some horrible betrayal. And, according to them, I was the one who betrayed her. She stole Grandma's bracelet. Chloe sobbed dramatically. The silver one Grandma gave me before she died. I stared at her in complete disbelief. What? No, I didn't. But my parents barely even looked at me. That was how things always worked in our family. Chloe cried. They believed her. And I suffered the consequences. Every single time. Growing up, Chloe figured out early that tears gave her power. She knew exactly how to twist stories, exactly how to make herself sound innocent, exactly how to turn herself into the victim, no matter what actually happened. Meanwhile, I was labeled the difficult child. Too emotional, too stubborn, too outspoken. If Chloe forgot homework, I got blamed for distracting her. If she broke something, my parents somehow accused me of upsetting her beforehand. If we argued, they assumed I started it before hearing a single word. At first, I tried defending myself. Eventually, I stopped, because in our house, Chloe's version of events always became the truth. But this time felt different. The bracelet wasn't just jewelry. It belonged to our grandmother before she died 2 years earlier, and my parents treated it like some sacred family treasure. Dad looked furious. Search her room. My stomach dropped instantly. What? Before I could stop her, Mom rushed upstairs toward my bedroom. I followed behind her in panic. You can't just go through my stuff. She ignored me completely. Drawers slammed open. Clothes got thrown across the floor. My school bag emptied onto the carpet. I kept trying to explain. I didn't take anything. Chloe's lying. Then suddenly Mom froze. There it is. My entire body went cold because sitting inside my desk drawer was Grandma's silver bracelet. For a second, I genuinely couldn't breathe. I had never seen it before. Chloe planted it there. I knew it instantly. Earlier that afternoon, she'd been alone in my room, borrowing makeup. Oh my God, Mom whispered in disappointment. No, I shouted immediately. She put it there. I swear she did. But downstairs, Chloe's crying suddenly got louder. Dad came storming into the room, took one look at the bracelet, and his face hardened completely. I'm done with you, Emily. The way he said it terrified me. Not angry, exhausted, like he had already decided I was guilty before any of this even started. I kept trying to explain. Anyway, the story made no sense. Why would I steal something so obvious? Why would I leave it sitting openly inside my own drawer? But nobody cared. Mom crossed her arms tightly. You need serious help. Help. Like I was some dangerous criminal instead of a terrified 15-year-old girl begging to be believed. Then Dad said the words that changed my life forever. Get out. I froze completely. What? You heard me, he snapped. Maybe spending one night outside this house will teach you some respect. Lightning exploded across the windows behind him. The storm outside had become violent now. Rain poured so heavily the streetlights outside were barely visible anymore. For a second, I thought Mom would stop him. Instead, she looked away. Take some time to think about what you've done. Panic rose instantly in my chest. I have nowhere to go. Dad walked toward the front door. Anyway, cold wind blasted into the hallway as he yanked it open. Should have thought about that before stealing. I started crying immediately. Real crying, not fake tears like Chloe. I begged them to listen, promised I didn't take anything, swore Chloe planted the bracelet herself. But Chloe just stood behind them pretending to sob into Mom's shoulder while secretly watching me with wide, innocent eyes. That image still haunts me, because deep down, she knew exactly what she was doing. And then Dad shoved my backpack into my arms. The next second, the front door slammed shut behind me. I stood there stunned in the pouring rain, while thunder cracked overhead, loud enough to shake the street. At first, I honestly believed they'd calm down and let me back inside after a few minutes. They didn't. I knocked repeatedly until my hands hurt. Nobody answered. Then the porch light suddenly switched off. That hurt worse than anything else, because it meant they wanted me gone. The rain soaked through my hoodie within minutes while freezing wind cut through my clothes. I sat on the porch, crying so hard I could barely breathe, but eventually even that felt pointless. So I stood up and started walking through the storm alone. No phone, no money, no idea where to go. Cars sprayed water across the sidewalks as they passed. Thunder echoed through the empty streets. I remember thinking I genuinely might not survive the night. Then headlights suddenly slowed beside me. A black SUV pulled over near the curb. At first, I panicked and stepped backward. Then the passenger window rolled down slowly. The driver stared at me for one long second, and suddenly his entire expression changed. Emily, I froze immediately because the man behind the wheel was someone I hadn't seen since I was 6 years old. My Uncle Daniel, my father's older brother, the same brother Dad refused to talk about for nearly 20 years. Uncle Daniel looked horrified seeing me soaked, shivering, and crying in the middle of a storm. "What happened to you?" he asked quietly. I opened my mouth to answer and completely broke down. Uncle Daniel didn't ask questions right away. The second he saw me crying, he unlocked the passenger door and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "You're safe," he said softly. "That's all that matters right now." I hadn't heard kindness like that in a long time. He took me to his house across town, a huge lakefront home I later learned he built after selling his software company for millions. That night, while I sat trembling near the fireplace drinking hot chocolate, Uncle Daniel finally asked what happened. When I told him everything, his face darkened more with every sentence, especially when I mentioned the bracelet. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "Your father used to do the exact same thing to me." I stared at him in shock. Daniel explained that growing up, my dad constantly blamed him for problems he didn't cause. Their parents always believed Dad because he was younger and more sensitive. Eventually, the lies destroyed their relationship completely. "And your father never forgave me for leaving," Daniel admitted quietly. The next morning, someone started pounding violently on the front door. Dad. The second he saw Uncle Daniel standing beside me, all the color drained from his face. His hands literally started shaking, because suddenly he realized two terrifying things at once. First, I had told someone the truth. And second, the one person who saved me was the only person who truly understood what kind of man he really was. Dad couldn't even look me in the eyes. Behind him, Mom stood pale and silent while Chloe cried fake tears again, claiming she'd found the bracelet under her own bed that morning. Uncle Daniel laughed bitterly. Some things never change. Dad's face crumbled instantly. For the first time in my life, I watched someone finally hold him accountable. Then Uncle Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder and calmly said, "She's staying with me." Dad opened his mouth to argue,